History is filled with deaths so brutal and disturbing that they're impossible to forget, reminding us just how thin the line is between life and horror. These are just 5 of the worst deaths ever recorded. The death of Gorgidoza, leader of a failed peasants' revolt in Hungary in 1514, is often cited as one of the most brutal in recorded history. The nobles staged a twisted mockery of a coronation. Doza was dragged into a public square and forced onto a throne forged from iron. As the crowd watched, fires were lit beneath it until the metal glowed red hot. He was shoved down onto the burning seat, the flesh of his back and legs instantly searing and sticking to the throne. They crowned him with an iron circlet pulled straight from the flames and thrust a sizzling scepter into his hand. Steam rose from his body as he gritted his teeth, his skin blistering and splitting open from the unbearable heat. For nearly an hour, Doza endured the agony, roasting alive yet refusing to die. When his body was too broken to sit upright, they tore him from the throne. But death would not come swiftly. Instead, they paraded his mutilated form before his captured followers, men who had been deliberately starved for 10 days. Driven by desperation and fear, they were ordered to rip pieces of Doza's flesh from his living body and eat it. Those who hesitated or refused were slaughtered on the spot. His scorched body was cut into quarters, and the bloodied remains were sent to different cities as a grotesque warning. This is what happens to those who defy the crown. In one of the most gruesome industrial accidents ever recorded, a Scottish man named Gordon Moffett from Buckhaven lost his life while working on an offshore oil rig. Dangling from a harness connected to a winch, Gordon was being slowly pulled toward a mouse hole, a narrow opening on the rig, barely 10 to 12 inches across. At a crawl of 11 inches per second, the cable fed him directly into the hole. There was no stopping it. Gordon's body was forced through the tiny opening, crushing him in the most brutal way imaginable. He died from crush asphyxiation and suffered catastrophic internal injuries. The accident was a nightmare scenario, slow, violent, and completely avoidable. Authorities later fined the drilling company 60,000 British pounds, citing serious failures in safety measures. The instruction was given to pull him up, but because the operator couldn't see Gordon, he was crushed to death. In 1692, during the height of the Salem witch trials, 81-year-old Giles Cory was accused of witchcraft, partly due to old grudges including the daughter of a longtime enemy. When dragged before the court, Cory refused to plead guilty or innocent. The punishment for standing mute was merciless, slow death by crushing. In September, Cory was stripped naked and laid in a pit with a wooden board placed across his chest. Heavy stones were stacked on the board one by one over the course of 3 agonizing days. Each time he was asked to enter a plea, Cory gave the same grim reply: more weight. Witnesses said the pressure was so great that Cory's tongue was forced out of his mouth, and the sheriff, showing no mercy, used his cane to shove it back in. Still, Cory refused to speak, determined to die without a plea and possibly protect his family's land from government seizure. This was because, under colonial law at the time, if someone pleaded guilty or was found guilty of a crime like witchcraft, the government could legally confiscate their land and possessions. He finally died after 3 days of unbearable torture, crushed under the weight of the stones. Just days later, his wife Martha Cory, who had also been accused, was hanged. Giles Cory's silent defiance remains one of the most brutal and haunting stories of the Salem witch trials. In a horrifying workplace accident, 62-year-old Jose Malena lost his life on October 11, 2012, after being cooked alive in an industrial oven at the Bumblebee Foods plant in Santa Fe Springs, California. Malena was loading tuna into one of the plant's massive 35-foot pressure cookers, used to sterilize thousands of pounds of canned tuna at a time, when a co-worker, mistakenly believing Malena was in the restroom, sealed the oven and turned it on. Over the next 2 hours, the oven was filled with 12,000 pounds of tuna, and the temperature inside rose to 270 degrees Fahrenheit. Malena's body was only discovered when the cooker was finally open after the cycle ended. A report by the California Division of Occupational Safety and Health revealed serious safety issues. The system was inherently dangerous. In the aftermath, Bumblebee Foods was held accountable and ordered to pay $6 million in penalties, including fines and restitution. The company also faced intense scrutiny over its safety procedures, or lack thereof, that led to such a preventable and gruesome death. In the summer of 1965, 16-year-old Sylvia Lyens and her sister Jenny were left in the care of Gertrude Bell, a woman already overwhelmed with her own 7 children. Their father, a struggling carnival worker, paid Gertrude $20 a week to look after them while he traveled. When 1 week's payment arrived late, Gertrude snapped and Sylvia became her target. What followed was 3 months of escalating torture, fueled by Gertrude's rage and mental instability. She beat Sylvia with belts and paddles, burned her fingertips, starved her, and forced her to eat her own vomit. She turned her children and neighborhood kids into tormentors, urging them to use Sylvia as an ashtray, to beat her, to carve words into her skin. Her pregnant daughter Paula accused Sylvia of being promiscuous and brutally mutilated her. Sylvia's final days were filled with agony. She could no longer walk, was denied use of a toilet, and whispered to her sister, "I'm going to die." After a failed escape attempt, Gertrude and a local boy beat her into a coma. She died shortly after. Though Gertrude was convicted of first-degree murder, she was paroled after just 20 years, dying of cancer in 1990. Justice felt bitterly incomplete.